All right. It looks like we're live. We're gonna see if the tweet goes out. That'll be our real confirmation. But oh, yep, there it is. All right. Welcome. This is Post Loons for the Minnesota United Colorado Rapids match at Colorado Rapids. I'm Dominic Bisogno. I've got MJ here as well. How are you doing, MJ?
I'm doing great. Super happy about the result, of course, and happy to be here with you, Dom.
Absolutely. We're the Jacob and Eli and Jacob and John as well. We're the backup crew. We're the extra backup crew.
Hey, you know what? I'm just happy to be here with some Sota soccer people and talk about the game, and to be honest, I know that you and I both have a passion for lower league soccer, and that doesn't mean we don't pay attention to major league soccer. We pay attention to it all.
Absolutely. That's a great point. As we go through all this, by the way, you can leave comments. The one warning that we always put on this is the one location where your comments won't get to us on here is Twitter. Everywhere else this video was put out, if you comment, that makes its way to us, but not Twitter. So just keep that in mind, but feel free to get those in through the show. This is, of course, presented to you by sotasoccer.com, where we've both had the pleasure of writing over the last year. And so we're going to get right into this. So Minnesota United have won 2-1 over the Colorado Rapids. It's their third game of the season, second win of the season. Minnesota United are undefeated as of now. If you want to keep up with more of these shows, if you want to keep up with everything else Sota Soccer's up to, also remember to subscribe and like all our stuff. Follow on Twitter. Do all the things, like all our stuff, and follow us everywhere that we're at. We're also on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. So thank you all for doing that. I have a feeling everyone watching already does that, but thank you if you have, and thank you if you do in the future. So we'll jump into our three things. That's each of us are going to have sort of three little highlight points to talk about before we kind of get into just the moment to moment of the match. I'll start out with mine. My first one was something I was impressed by. This game, we saw some changes in the roster. We'll lay those out a little more detailed in a minute. But I was really happy with some of the maturity we saw from a couple of the younger members of the squad that played today, particularly Rosales, Flanwane, and Taylor. Admittedly, some of what I'm about to talk about started to fade away a little bit in the end. Maybe after about the hour mark, things got a little more hectic, a little less under control. But particularly in the first half, I was really impressed by all three really stepping into their roles in this game. Rosales, I thought, had a really great first hour. Ended up getting subbed out for Coleman, really just to bolster the defense at the end, not really reflective of any problem in the performance. But I thought he had a great game. I thought in that first half particularly, he put in some really good balls. Quite unlucky, really, to not create a goal. Created sort of the first big chance for Minnesota. And actually looked really good on the wing there as sort of a surprise appearance, a surprise at least to me. And then Flanwane and Taylor, what I really liked from them today was I thought they went forward together very well, but I also really liked the effort they put in on turnovers to defend the ball and stop any sort of early out balls. There were a couple times that they worked pretty hard to stop that in the first half. And I think that was quite helpful in keeping at least that 45-minute clean sheet that Minnesota United got. So first of all, it's just sort of some really competent, mature performances from guys that are on the young side. Real quick, because I think this is funny, Eric Grady is asking, do you think goals really do change games? And Sota Soccer is a major believer in the idea that goals change games. That's a powerful Heathism to bring up early in the broadcast. So yeah, that's my first of the three things. I'll throw over to you, MJ, for your first one.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you, Dominic, that the maturity of some of our younger players definitely impacted the game. My biggest frustration, and I guess this is my first bullet point, is going to be that we left. Both teams were trying to attack down the left side of the field, and then that frustrated the defenses on the right. And twice we left a wide open player on our right defensive side whether between Arriaga and DJ Taylor and Boxall, whoever was supposed to be over there wasn't there. The first time led to a goal. The second time, thankfully, did not.
Right.
And that was late in the game. So Cole Bassett just open left open for a goal. Actually, I'm sorry. No, Cole Bassett was not one of them. Towards the end of the first half, Barrios was left wide open, and DJ made the save. But that was
they gave Barrios way too much room. I agree.
Yeah. And the hard part about that is Barrios does not necessarily stay in one part of the pitch. He's not always coming down the way Colorado does their front attack. It's very fluid, and Barrios is moving from the left to the center to the right. And so he's frustrating various different parts of our back line. It's not like one member of the back line can just focus on him and guard him and stay with him. So.
No, that's absolutely fair. Does that wrap up your first thing, or you want?
Yeah, that's my first thing. It's just
gotcha.
we left whoever it was, like towards the end there. I can't remember who it was, but they again were wide open on our right side. DJ Taylor did do enough to get in the person's face and to try to close the gap, but we were leaving that weak side open. And it really was haunting for me, because this is weak side defense is just been part of our weaknesses ever since 2017. It's not really something that Heath has successfully addressed, in my opinion. So it was like flashbacks to 2017, 2018, when we were at our worst, and just like any cross or any switch of the pitch that goes over to the weak side ends up resulting in a goal. This time it looked bad initially, but whether it was Dane St. Clair making a great save or the defense closing down that space and just not letting them get the shot off clean, we did enough.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'll get into my second three things now. That is, and this might be harsh. Obviously, he did score our first goal of the game, but I'm still not really convinced by Amaria's performances this season so far. He came in at halftime at the actual break for Mender Garcia, who started up front. He did end up converting that penalty to equalize for Minnesota United early in the second half. I, however, continue to see a lot of the problems people have pointed out about Amaria, essentially dating back to the last game, the Red Bulls game, where he came on in the second half as well. Just seemed to not exactly gel with the team. A lot of the passes were a little confusing, didn't quite go where they seemed to be needing to go, didn't seem to be receiving passes always quite well himself. There's just seemed to be a lot of question marks. I do want to quickly also add that John Marthaler has actually tweeted that he asked Adrian Heath after the game about that substitution, and Adrian Heath did say that Garcia was not injured and that the substitution was related to, or rather that Heath told him, I told him that we needed more. So the substitution was out of the desire of the coach. It was not an injury or anything like that. It was unclear at the time. So, I mean, it worked out in the end in the sense that he's on there to score the pen, and obviously the team ends up winning. But I didn't love anything about what I saw, and frankly, if Garcia was still on the pitch, I'm sure whoever took that penalty would have scored it. So I was not loving that second half cameo from Amaria.
One of the things that I like about Amaria is that he tends to do things to try to create space either for himself or his other teammates. And I guess where I would agree with you is sometimes the person with the ball isn't seeing that lane that he is creating to pass to him, or isn't seeing the lane that they need to run. And also, it's not just Amaria doing good things and the team being dumb. Sometimes the team is trying to create spaces, and Amaria needs to look and see what spaces the players with the ball and around him, and he needs to kind of go to that obvious spot that sometimes he's not going to. So it's definitely a chemistry, communication thing, and I'm hoping that gets better as the season goes on. But I think, Dom, you would agree with me that we were hoping it would get better last season as the season went on
Right.
with Reynoso, and that connection didn't quite have that 1-2 punch we were hoping for Minnesota United last year.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. If you want to go
My
ahead.
second point is the tale of the two Rapids, and that is the tale of the two halves of the Rapids. And that would be in the first half, they seem to foul a lot. Lawless Abubakar, Danny Wilson, anybody who knows these players on the back lines know that they can be brutal, knows that they can be physical. But then you saw midfielder, center mid Max getting in there, first with DJ Taylor, then second with I think he had the bear hug on Lude. The bear hug takedown. There were several players that tried the bear hug takedown. I'm thinking that's one of the things that Robert Frazier specializes in is if they're getting by you, grab.
Oh, I think I lost MJ there. MJ, do you hear me? Okay. Well, hopefully he gets back in here in a second. But yeah, I mean, to MJ's point. Oh, are you back?
I'm back. Did you...
I heard you talking about the bear hugs, and you cut out a little bit after. Oh. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead with my third point while we figure that out. But definitely agree with MJ that there was a lot of physical play from.
Oh, I'll just say the second half, instead of fouling, they were just diving a lot.
Okay.
And we had our share of physical play too. It's not like it was one-sided. You know, we had our, and then especially after we went up 2-1, you know, Dane St. Clair was falling on the ball. You know, we had people go down, presumably with injury, maybe not, but like there was definitely some gamesmanship and some what we call CONCACAF type dark arts of football going on by both teams. But my goodness, with Colorado, it almost seemed like everyone was on a hive mind with okay, we're going to be physical and we're going to foul a lot the first half, and then we're going to pretend like we get fouled in the second half. It seemed to be like someone flicked a switch for the whole team. I'm surely this is just some MJ bullshit. Some, you know, this is not legitimate coming from the coach. That's how it appeared to me.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, this is a fixture that usually involves acts similar in severity to bear hugging a guy to the ground. So, you know,
yeah,
at a certain point, I guess I'm not surprised. But
there are so many red cards that we can talk about.
This was the cleanest edition of this matchup, I think, in MLS history.
One of the most red card free editions of Rapids versus Loons.
So no, yeah, I definitely agree with you though. There was interesting transformation across the 90 minutes. My third top three, I'll connect this to a comment quick I see here from MJ saying, talking about everybody, the other MJ, not you MJ, and the Thomas MJ, talking about everybody's pulling their weight without Ray there, and obviously with an offensive player, a lot of that weight has going to have to do with transpiration and scoring, and somebody that came up big today on that line of things without necessarily being expected to was Miguel Tapias at the end there. With his goal, his first MLS goal, his first Minnesota United goal. And this whole game, it's not a clean sheet, which obviously is going to be a detractor to any sort of stats you talk about with a center back in a game. But I was really liking Miguel Tapias in this game. Ends up doing a really nice job with that goal, doing exactly what he needs to do to help that ball lawn into the net. But also, I thought had a really good physical performance overall, defensively. That the goal that does get let in is, to be perfectly frank, mostly on Taylor and St. Clair for getting let in. I don't think he particularly plays a huge role in it. When it was up to him, I really liked what I saw. And I'm really impressed just by his sort of continued journey that we're seeing melding with this team into this league, into Minnesota. And I continue to be impressed by him. And the fact that he gets that goal, I think, is a really nice sort of cherry on top of what's been a really solid 3 performances from him. So, and of course, you also have to keep in mind he sort of informally assists the goal against New York Red Bulls. He doesn't get a formal assist because it goes in after the goalkeeper deflects the first shot. But He's proven to be pretty dangerous in the box, and of course quite effective in Minnesota United's box defensively. So I just really enjoyed his 90 minutes. Glad to see it at the end there. There was that collision, that head collision. He seemed to be okay afterwards and got back on. So yeah, just really enjoying Tapias's introduction to this team, and thought his goal tonight was a really nice sort of capstone to his start with the team.
At 26 years old, he's almost the perfect counterpoint for Michael Boxall in both of his style of play. He provides some more speed back there, and his defensive intelligence for his age is pretty good. We've seen, much better younger center backs in even in this league, but Miguel Tapias is the right fit to pair along Boxall, and it's going to be fun seeing their chemistry, the two center backs, get better as the season goes on.
Definitely agree. Let's get your last. My
last bullet point is this is the Loons' first win at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. We do not play well at altitude. You can look at our results at Real Salt Lake and Colorado for proof of this. We do not play well when the air is thin. And it was so nice. I think the two closest times we got it was 2-2 draws. And it was looking when Colorado was, in that 8 minutes of stoppage time, we're looking at, are they going to get another 2-2 draw out of this? And for the most part, Minnesota locked it down. Some of it was Colorado not being as effective on the attack, but a lot of times they got balls in, or they got balls dribbled and passed balls into the box, and we defended well. So congrats on the Loons getting their first win in Denver.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Rapids, essentially since Minnesota United joined this league, the Rapids have consistently been one of the worst performing teams in the league. But at the end of the day, that stadium is always just going to be a tough place to play, partly because of how they play. And of course, it helps to have the crowd on their side, but also the altitude, the conditions, not so much going to bother Minnesota, but the weather can obviously be harsh sometimes. And so it's a tough place to go and win. Minnesota United's learned that, and yeah, it's awesome to see them sort of break the jinx on this game. Speaking of altitude, Minnesota doesn't have an altitude problem, which is all the more reason to talk to our friend Nate Pence.
Yeah.
To continue your lovely lives in the state of Minnesota. If you're on Minnesota United Twitter, you probably know who Nate Pence is. He's a diehard Loons supporter, but he's also a supporter of Minnesota soccer as a whole. Nate and his team are realtors serving the Twin Cities area, and he proudly supports various teams and organizations in the local soccer community, including Minnesota Aurora, Minneapolis City. He's also a great follow in general if you like the soccer community in Minnesota. And he's a friend of Equal Time Soccer and, of course, us, Sota Soccer. Not only is Nate ingrained in the local soccer ecosystem here, he's also helped countless people in and around the metro buy and sell their homes and has made them very happy as a result. So just head to penshomes.com to get the process started, or email Nate directly at nate@penshomes.com. Also make sure to let him know Post Loons and Sota Soccer sent you. Nate Pence has been a very good friend of ours, and we are very lucky to have him supporting things like Post Loons. So absolutely, go check him out. Go check out Pence Homes, and again, check out his Twitter because it's a good follow for input on the lower elite soccer scene, Minnesota United, and a lot more things. So
Thank you, Nate Pence.
Yes, shout out to Nate Pence. Back to the game. We're going to go through some match moments here. Encourage people to continue to send comments and questions. We're going to sort of filter through those as we go through here. We'll start obviously with the first half. First half ended 0-0, so there's no goals to talk about here. There are a couple quick notes to be had here. I mentioned before, I thought Joseph Rosales had a good start. In both the 4th and 12th minutes, he created basically the first big chances for Minnesota. First one got picked up pretty comfortably by Yarbrough. And the 12th minute chance was the Garcia header that kind of hit Ron and flicked off to the side, but was sort of a early sign that Minnesota United might be scoring some goals on the night. All the way to the 30th minute, kind of wait for the first real big chance from Minnesota. That's Robin Lod, who sort of gets a out of the box curling shot that goes past the left post by a couple inches, forces a dive from the goalkeeper as well. That's sort of, again, teasing the fact that the Loons might be going for something here.
That was off of Arriaga corner, right?
Yes, I think so. There was a set piece in the build up to it.
Yeah,
I'm blanking on if it was the Arriaga corner, but
yeah,
but yes. And then about 5 minutes later, the game got its first yellow card. We talked about no red cards, and it was a pretty tame game, I think, overall, even on the yellow card front. But Max, Colorado Rapids player Max, gets the first yellow card for pulling down Robin Lod, more or less in the center circle, if I recall correctly.
That was the bear hug to pull down. Yeah,
yes, that was the bear hug. And then 45th minute, Dane St. Clair gets a good save. This kind of goes out. You mentioned Barrios earlier. Gets a comfortable but good save right at the end of the half off sort of a bouncing chance from Barrios. Kind of hits the ground before it gets to St. Clair. And one of those ones that St. Clair should be saving, but every now and then you see a goalkeeper sort of misread and it lobs over them. And that ends the half. Also, real quickly, actually mention the lineup for tonight. It was still the 4-2-3-1 / 4-3-3 with Robin Lod sort of moving up and down as needed. The big changes tonight were DJ Taylor starting in the back four instead of Valentine, making his first start of the season. Dotson starting alongside Arriaga, Trapp on the bench, and then Joseph Rosales starting out on the left wing. Instead of Fragapane. So those are your big three changes. Otherwise, it's the same 11 and more or less the same formation. Transition to the second half. First change made by Minnesota United. Amaria comes on for Garcia. We noted earlier. Heath has since confirmed that was not injury related.
Early sub for Heath.
Yes, I was frankly a little surprised.
Like right at the 46th minute. What?
Yeah.
What?
I was a little surprised, but and you know, to be honest, I think I disagree with it still.
Yeah.
But that that's the call he made. He clearly was not happy with the first half. It is worth noting that in the first half, Minnesota United had 0 shots on target. And so it was not an offensively great half for Minnesota United. I don't personally think Mender Garcia had anything to do with the problem with that, but clearly Heath decided that he felt Amaria entering the mix could help solve that. So you have Amaria come on. Just a couple minutes later, you do have the opener from Colorado, and it's a bit of a tough one to take, especially at the moment. I think when it felt like a real momentum killer. It's Cole Bassett who sort of sneaks a scuff shot past St. Clair. He manages to create a little bit of space around Taylor, who's marking him, really right on the edge of that 6-yard box area. And he just sort of manages to trail the ball past St. Clair. It really sort of crawls past the line by the time it's in the net, but it's well placed in the sense that nobody's quite able to get to it. Colorado have their lead. It's the first time this season that Minnesota have conceded the opener goal of a game. And frankly, it's not a very Hollywood goal to do that for them. The good news is that 5 minutes later, Minnesota United win a penalty after Bassett himself commits a handball in the Colorado box.
Great dribble by Dotson to create that handball.
Yeah, very well played to force the situation. To be fair to Bassett, he's trying to get his arm out of the way. It's a harsh call in the sense that it's not a super deliberate handball, but it is a hand stopping the ball from getting where it needs to go, and it is a fair call. It's just a harsh.
The arm was away from the body, very much away from the body.
Yeah. So Amaria steps up, having been on the field for about 10 minutes, and converts that one, slots into the bottom right corner, sends the goalkeeper the wrong way along the way. That's his first goal of the season, and first goal involvement of the season, unless I'm misremembering. And so all of a sudden, it's back to 1-1. It's a draw. And it's more or less even Stevens for everybody. Just 2 minutes after that, we see the second substitution in the game. Fragapane comes on for Dotson. That ends up being a fortuitous substitution later in the game. and we see Rosales kind of drop back essentially into the role Dotson was playing at that point. Yep. About 10 minutes after that, there's a moment of relief that's cut short. So Colorado have a couple chances quickly in the box, basically a ball that's not getting clear. There's a couple headers. Eventually, there's a shot over the crossbar. Dane Sinclair makes a couple saves. Eventually, a counterattack is triggered by Minnesota United, and it ends in Hlonwane chipping the goalkeeper more or less to score. However, he's ended up deemed to be about an inch offside off of the Amaria pass to him, which was I believe it was a 3-on-2 opportunity, which at the time was felt like a pretty rough waste of the opportunity. Jack Price ends up. Yeah, go ahead.
Everyone at the Blackheart was yelling at each touch of that 3-on-2 because we recognized they had an advantage, and the two defenders had to pull back and give us space. So everyone who's getting the ball is getting it with space. Shoot, just shoot. And then we were so happy when it looked like all this patience and what we thought was wasted time and wasted possession, like all of this wasted time ended up with the ball in the back of the net for us. But too bad, so sad. We were offside by maybe just a toenail, but we were.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I don't know exactly who to point the finger at in terms of who ruined that opportunity. But it ends up just being, I guess, a case of miscommunication, slight mistiming. To be perfectly fair, I mean, it's offside, but it's offside by a pretty small fraction. And Amaria's pass to Hlonwane, in theory, is a well played ball into some really good space for Hlonwane. But it's not to be. In the course of that counterattack, it's worth noting Jack Price actually went down, which with what seemed to end up being a serious injury. He actually got carried off in the arms of some physios. So that ends up being sort of the long-term repercussion of that play. Stays 1-1 at that point.
Jack Price is coming off an injury. I questioned whether he would even be allowed into this game. Obviously, they want to get him out there, see what he could do. I do not like his style of play, both in the sense of what he does good for Colorado and what he does dirty for Colorado. I'm not happy with either of those things. So I never like to see a player go out injured, but yeah, definitely he is more dangerous when he's on the pitch. So
yeah, and I mean, it's never a fun thing to admit, but his departure certainly, I think, helped open doors for Minnesota United to take advantage of. 2 minutes after all of that happens, you have a yellow card produced to Priso and Mbangu near the box, a bit away from the Colorado box. This sets up the Fragapane free kick.
That was also a bear hug takedown.
Also a bear hug takedown
on Bongi this time, and not Lud. But it was on again. I think this is a trend technique. We can bring in our friend Eric Silva Brenneman to give the technical Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu name for this technique, but it was a consistent thing they were trying to do to us.
They're embracing the wilderness identity of their state.
They're embracing something. They're embracing Loons.
That sets up the free kick from Fragapane, the second half substitute, who on his own sends a very good ball into the box. It happens to fall perfectly onto the head of Miguel Tapias, who's sort of on the inside edge of the 18-yard box. He flicks it on and produces one of the better sort of long-range flicked headers I've seen in a bit. Sends it right into the far, I guess it'd be the far post, the right post of the net, sneaks right past the diving goalkeeper and goes in for Minnesota United's second goal of the day. Gives them the lead. That's, again, Miguel Tapias' first goal for Minnesota United, first goal in MLS.
Beautiful redirection.
Yeah.
Beautiful redirection.
Really wonderful.
Fortuitous.
It's a great example of headers in general tend to kind of be thought of, obviously, as a very sort of like blunt way of scoring a goal. But there are ways that a header can be really mastercrafted in the same way that a good shot can be. And that actually, to me, is a great example of that. He's done exactly what he needs to do to that ball, and nothing more, nothing less. He's done exactly what he needs to do to it to get it slightly differently directed to get past the keeper. Because if you just let that Fragapane ball soar past the crowd, I think the keeper gets it probably comfortably. but just that ever so slight change of the twist of the direction ends up perfectly sinking past him. So it's in the sense of, you know, jumping up and heading in the ball, it's a very center back goal. But I actually think it's also quite reflective of the skill that I think we both are identifying in him and hoping to see more of. In that, it showed some good understanding of the ball, some good understanding of how to score a good goal. So yeah, it's
Didn't
a
he have
really
his back
good.
to the net there? Wasn't that kind of like
Yes. Yep.
And so one of the things I appreciate this, and this is anybody who's tried to hit a soccer ball, it's actually hard to time even when you can see the ball and you're heading forward, because with where it needs to contact your forehead, you're taking your eyes off the ball. When it's going off your back shoulder and you're thwarting your head backwards at it, it's even harder to time that. But what I liked about it is he kind of knew how to judge the height of the ball to where if I hit my head back now, it should not change the height of the ball too much. So many times you see this, you mistime it, it hits the wrong part of the head, or it's the wrong timing, and the ball just goes up over the net, or the person who's trying to head the ball blindly to their backside, they miss it completely. You know,
Yeah.
So very impressive by Tapias. Can't say enough
sure.
good things about him for this game.
Yeah, for sure. And I see a comment here that's worth noting. Eric Grady's mentioning, you know, it's possible that's something that they've practiced or planned, because it certainly did seem like, well, obviously Miguel Tapias had the idea to do it in the first place. That would suggest some sort of previous inspiration. And the Fragapane free kick was not particularly high, so it was well placed for someone to try and do that. So I mean, that's a good point. That might be something that they've worked out in the past. That being said, very impressive to see someone manage to pull it off in a real game, because that's a very easy thing to mess up when there's actual defenders to, you know, manage the situation and stop you. So, you know, yeah, either way, very happy with it. But if it is something that was practiced, which I actually would think it probably is, all the more good, in the sense that it shows that, you know, they're figuring out creative ways to get those goals without their sort of signature chance creator.
I mean, anybody who's been following this team knows that set pieces haven't been one of our strengths. And I think what we've seen over the last 2 seasons is definitely a general improvement in the creativity and the design of some of our dead ball situations in general.
Absolutely. That goal goes in. Rest of the game is essentially a bunkering down for Minnesota United. That's where you get the Coleman and substitution in from Rosales. You also get Valentin in for Taylor to sort of bunker down. It was interesting to see some minutes from both of those guys. I mentioned before there was a brief head collision situation that ended up resulting in both players coming back in the mix as well during that. Minnesota United do hold out. There's some time wasting that got some groans from the audience in Colorado, including a very dramatic Dane St. Clair jumping onto a ball that was literally just rolling in front of him. And you know what? I completely understand them being very pissed off about that. At the same time, I couldn't have been prouder of our Canadian goalkeeper.
Yes.
What was
embrace the CONCACAF dark arts. Embrace it, Dane. Just
that is even a higher level of thinking than just playing into the corner and dribbling around to jump onto a ball that is essentially not moving. But Minnesota do hold out. They get that 2-1 win. Again, Minnesota United undefeated after 3 games. They're actually, if you give them favor for games in hand, I believe they're tied for 3rd in the West right now.
Yeah, points per game wise, they're up there because some teams have played 4 games.
Right. They have the same amount of points as LAFC, Seattle, and someone else I think that I'm blanking on.
And undefeated. Yeah.
So you know, needless to say, after 3 games, it's an interesting start. It's an encouraging start. You know, on 10K on the podcast, both Jeremy and I were talking about how, you know, at the end of the day, after these 3 games, if you have 2 wins and a draw, that sounds pretty good. And
yeah,
after this performance, with the context of this game, it still sounds pretty good to me. Would I have liked Minnesota to play a little better against a Rapids team that is definitely not good? Sure. But at the end of the day, getting this amount of points, considering the problems this team has in various levels, certainly including players not being available, I think that's a fantastic start. Sounds like you agree with me, but I don't know if you have any more to add on that front.
If you would have told me that the Loons would have been undefeated at this point with 7 points, I would have said, no way.
Yeah.
No Ray, no way. But they proved me wrong once again, and I will be happy when every time the Loons prove me wrong when I'm the negative Nathan in the room.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, between Jeremy and I'm usually the one doing that too. But I actually feel quite good about these 3 games. There's certainly been down points. There's certainly been moments that haven't been great. Obviously, there's goals conceded that you can have criticisms of, but overall, 90-minute to 90-minute performance.
Dominic,
yeah,
I have a question for you. Would you say that without Reynoso that you're seeing more Loons get a chance to shine? Or is that maybe me just as an observer, now that Ray's not on the pitch, I'm actually can focus on some of the other players. They were always doing good things, but Ray was just kind of the distraction.
So I have an answer to that, but the answer comes with a pretty considerable caveat. So I think that Ray not being there is forcing more players to do more offensively. Yes, I think that there is something to that. So that sounds great. My caveat to that is that I still think that this team's ability to produce goals is considerably worse without him.
Sure.
At the end of the day, I mean, the goals that this team are getting are mostly scrappy goals. They're rebounds, they're penalties, they're not creating amazing free flowing goals on any of these games. And so, yes, I think that players have stepped up in the sense that they know that they got to be the ones to do the job. I just think that there's still the concern about whether or not that is ever going to be able to equal out what they would be getting if they had him there. Obviously, there's work being done on the transfer market to potentially sort of curb all of that. But just from these 3 games, I love that you're seeing guys getting goals that they're working for it in a way they might have not worked for it in other contexts. I love that. I love, by the way, that we're seeing someone like Joseph Rosales get in there, get some crosses in, get close to assisting a goal, all that kind of stuff. I love it. I am a slightly concerned that soon it's going to dry out.
Sure.
And so that's the question, right? Is like when is this style going to get figured out by somebody, and they're not going to be able to get points like this every week.
Someone we haven't talked a lot about yet, Bongi, Bongo Kukshe Songwane, I thought had a great game today. He at times, most of last season and part of the season, horrible on defense. When he gets the ball, always has his head down, not looking up. I felt like he had better chemistry and had his head up a little bit better today. Certainly times he was getting double or triple teamed, or he was dribbling into double triple teams where he still had that Bongi head down mentality, but he was finding ways to create space for himself, get balls out of congested areas into more open situations, and find his teammates better this game than we've seen him in previous games. And so again, is this going to be a one-off, or is this a sign of improvement to come? Time will tell.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that I mentioned in the 3 things defensively, I really liked some of the stuff he was doing. I thought he had a great game. He, for what it's worth, this is not a great metric, but he was voted man of the match for Minnesota United. And I think people are noticing that, even if he didn't get a goal today or a goal involvement today.
Right.
There's stuff that he's doing off the ball that's incredibly important to what's being pulled off in some of these games in a very gritty setting. I love that, because frankly, to your point, you mentioned last season, I think this is the one thing that was the problem with him. You saw a lot of energy and you saw a lot of attacking potential, but there was that question of sort of like football maturity, or whatever you want to call it, of
bad first touches.
And it seems like this season that's more or less fixed, or at least you see the improvement happening.
Right. And significant improvement, because that if someone, if a football dunce like I notice it as an improvement, then it's probably a pretty great improvement. There's been probably some baby step improvements along the way that I just, with my eyes just did not see. But
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I'm super excited for the future of him with our team if he continues to improve at this rate. Again, he's a younger guy.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was supposed to be. I mean, he has been a project player, but he was supposed to be a project player, which can mean a lot of things. I know last year there was conversation about whether or not he was even going to play for the first team when they signed him. So it's been a very positive journey for him, I think. Real quick, want to mention what's on tap for Minnesota United in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, next Saturday, they're returning home to Allianz Field to host the Vancouver Whitecaps, who I believe are still playing the Galaxy. I believe that game's 1-1. They will be missing several players due to the international window. It looks like there'll be about 5 starters that will be out of the picture. Whitecaps, of course, will also be missing some players for that same reason. And then the week after that, on April 1st, is when they will be heading to St. Louis to play St. Louis City for the first time. St. Louis City, who have started the season fantastically. I believe they're 4 for 4. And, we were just talking about this sort of what's the timer on this current strategy? What's the long, when is this current approach going to get figured out a little bit and maybe start to not work so much? Playing St. Louis City, potentially a good time to bet that will start to happen, just in the sense that's a team that's performing really well. I don't know if the sort of scrappy mentality that Daniel Scholes right now is going to work there. But that's the next 2 games. I will note real quick that the next 2 games after that are also Chicago and Orlando, which to me feel like games you can win. And so I think these next 4 games overall, I think there's a lot of points on the table for Minnesota, which is definitely exciting.
Game ends Los Angeles Galaxy 1, Vancouver Whitecaps 1.
There you go.
So
I think both those teams obviously have started the season pretty badly. So I think overall that indicates still that there's room to be excited for Minnesota United in that game. Obviously at home as well helps. So
the big question I have is if Loon is going to be playing for Finland next week, what formation are we going to use, and who depending on the formation, we may not need a number 10 like a central attacking midfielder like Loon, but like who's the person who's going to step into those shoes? So.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, the person that would sound best to me to be like the third string for all that would be Rosales, but he's not going to be available either. So yeah, you wonder what do you see from a Dunbar or a Dotson or how does a formation change potentially accommodate that? Yeah, I think that's a huge question that is going to have to be answered.
Because normally I would say this Minnesota United team against the Vancouver Whitecaps at Allianz, like that's a shoo-in for Minnesota United, but they have some questions to be asked and answered.
Absolutely. Let's see. Quick rundown of a couple of things that occurred to me might be worth mentioning. Minnesota United won this game tonight with 39% possession. Pretty low considering. They had 74% pass or 74% passing accuracy, which was significantly better than the Red Bulls game by about 30%. They end up winning 2-1 with 2 shots on target. So it's a pretty efficient performance offensively for them. They ended up with 11 shots total at halftime. They, as I mentioned before, had 0 shots on target. So overall, there's some humble stats there for Minnesota, but ones that I suppose reflect that they worked pretty hard to make the most of the chances that they got and the shots that they got. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll throw to you quick as we sort of wrap up here. Is there any other sort of points that you want to talk about this game, MJ?
Just again, wanting to double check with you if you see the same things I am. If we throw out the snow game with the Red Bulls just because of the conditions, and we obviously were not trying to possess. At times we were looking at just boot the ball forward and see what happens. It looked like we were not trying to play precise loon-to-loon passes because we knew we couldn't do that. Right. I am surprised, but again, pleasantly surprised that the Loons are playing more possession. They seem to be more patient and valuing time with the ball more than trying to play a more NBA up and down the pitch, shoot or cross just whenever, risk everything to throw a ball somewhere near the net when you're down there. And you see a little bit more back passes. You see a little bit more trying to work certain give goes or certain combinations in and around the attacking third. I think that's a good thing. Are you seeing the same thing again, mostly in the first and third games?
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. There's something methodical about the way this team's trying to make time for itself, make chances for itself. Today it's interesting because you see the actual goals themselves essentially come from a good run down the right wing that sort of puts Bassett in an awkward position, and then a set piece. And so I remember I think in the last podcast I think I said something like along this lines to Jeremy, just about how it was interesting to me that players were scoring goals so far for this team, and I think tonight kind of stayed the same, that weren't goals that match their style. So like Garcia and Juanmane's goals in those first two games were not necessarily the goals that like a computer would have generated their style based.
Right.
Chat GTP or whatever wouldn't have answered those goals to those guys. Like their speed had nothing to do with it. Even really ball control had nothing to do with it. It was just being in the right place at the right time. Close quarters, kind of fox in the box kind of goals.
Yeah.
And so tonight, again, it's all sort of an extension of that in the sense that it feels like this is a team that's sort of almost accepting the flow of the game a little bit and not worrying too much about doing their individual things.
Right,
and just sort of getting the job done. I don't know if part of that's just something you have to do when you know that you don't have like your chance creator guy in the middle that you normally would want, or if that's related to that at all. But they don't seem incredibly desperate to get the ball moving always. To your point, it's a little bit figuring things out, taking your time. Except when you need to blitz to the other end of the field, they do what they have to do. But even to be honest with that, you were joking about people's reactions to the Juan Wane goal that ended up being offside. But even in that run of play, you sort of saw those three guys, and admittedly, it doesn't. I'm talking about it positively. Obviously, they ended up messing it up a little bit because it got hit offside. But overall, a very well played situation where you're moving the ball around and you're taking your time, but you end up putting a guy in a great position. You have to do it slightly more correct to get him in the actual right position, but that's a relatively small margin of error that's just being messed up at the end there. So yeah, I agree that there's something methodical and something a little more open to what the game hands you that I'm seeing from some of the guys. But it's going to be interesting to see how that continues to evolve, because part of me wonders, first of all, is there going to be a point where Amarilla just starts playing more games and playing more minutes because he wants him to?
Right.
When that happens, how does that change things? Does Reynoso, the elephant in the room is Reynoso might still end up playing for this team. So, what happens when that happens?
Right.
All these sorts of things, obviously international break, all these sorts of factors that can kind of put little stops and changes. It's going to be interesting to see how this attack continues to evolve with that. But I think we both have some optimism at the very least with what this team's managing to do with its current situation. I think a lot of people do, actually.
On that optimism, and specifically that offside 3-on-2 that we talked about, if this team makes the playoffs, if this team continues to surprise me with getting results, even though it's not always pretty, it will be because it's going to be more plays like that. You're going to see more where, yes, we're not going to win the possession, but when we do have the possession, we're going to make the most out of it. You mentioned the 2 goals off of 2 shots on net. We are going to concede possession. We're going to value our defense. We're going to hit you on the counter. If we can get some more numbers forward, we're going to really try to value possession and use our numbers forward. And if we do that, you're going to see a different Loons, and you might even see a more winning Loons. And I hope that happens.
Yeah, I think we all do. I think that's a good place to note, because it is already the next day after this game. So we'll wrap it up there. I want to quickly shout out, by the way, Jeremy, who is at an event, I believe, at a wedding. he actually got the DJ at the event anyways to play Wonderwall. So shout out to Jeremy for
Way to
being
go, boss.
a real one. Yeah. So we'll wrap it up there. Again, Minnesota United beat Colorado 2-1. Goals from Amaria and Tapias for the Loons. It might not be us, but we'll be back doing this after the Vancouver game. Make sure to follow Sota Soccer on Twitter, and make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast feed on wherever you listen to it. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Dominic. He's MJ. It's been great having you all, and been great time about this game. So thank you for joining us. See you later.
Thank you.